The combat hall of Arethian Academy smelled like ozone and fear. 40 cadets stood in rows, 22 alien species, shapes that bent light, skin that shifted color, limbs that folded wrong. And at the very back, alone in her row, stood Mara Ellison. Human. Deathworld origin. Terran. She was the only one. The others had given her space not out of kindness, out of something older. An instinct. The way prey gives space to a predator it cannot name yet. Instructor Kale Veyron paced the front of the hall like he owned the gravity itself. He was Velhari, a species built for psychological dominance. 7 feet of sculpted bone and iridescent chitin, with 4 arms that moved in deliberate, overlapping arcs. His face was a mask of calcified ridges, expressionless by design. His voice was tuned to produce subfrequencies that induced compliance in most sentient species. Most. Today, Veyron announced, his voice rolling across the hall like a low tremor, we begin Phase 2 of combat doctrine. Those of you who survived Phase 1, he let the pause stretch, did so because I allowed it. Mara's jaw tightened slightly. She had not been allowed anything. She had earned every scar on her hands. Veyron moved through the rows like a slow predator, lifting data slates from cadets' hands, critiquing posture, stance, readiness. His criticisms were surgical. Precise. Each one landed exactly where it would sting longest. When he reached Mara, he stopped. He looked at her the way a person looks at a piece of furniture that has wandered into the wrong room. Ellison. Her name in his mouth sounded like an administrative error. Your Phase 1 scores. Above passing threshold, she said. Flat. Not a boast. A fact. Barely. 91st percentile, she corrected. The hall went very quiet. Several Velhari cadets near the front rotated their secondary eyes toward her. The Geth cadets, pack bonders, hyper-attuned to social hierarchy, went rigid with second-hand alarm. No one corrected Instructor Veyron. No one. Veyron turned slowly. Not with anger, with something colder. Calculation. You believe, he said carefully, that raw scores indicate combat readiness. I believe inaccurate statements should be corrected, Mara replied. Especially in an institution that claims to train intelligence officers. The silence deepened. One of the Geth cadets, a young male named Tezeri, made a soft, involuntary sound. It was the sound his species made when watching something catastrophically misjudge its situation. Veyron moved. It was fast, genuinely fast, even by Velhari standards. His primary arm swung in a precise, controlled arc. Not a wild blow. A lesson. The kind of strike designed to put a cadet on the floor without permanent damage. A reminder of who held authority in this room. It never landed. What happened next took 0.4 seconds. Later, when the Academy's motion sensors were reviewed, the analysts would watch the footage 17 times before they stopped arguing about what they were seeing. Mara's left hand intercepted his wrist. Not blocked, intercepted. Like she had known exactly where it was going before it arrived, like she had already been waiting there. Her grip closed. Veyron felt it immediately, the pressure, the angle, the absolute lack of give, and something ancient in his nervous system sent up a signal he hadn't felt in 20 years of instructing: danger. She turned his wrist inward. 1 degree. Then 2. The geometry of it was wrong for every species in the room, too much leverage from too small a frame. His elbow bent at an angle it was not designed to bend, and his body followed because the alternative was catastrophic. Veyron found himself staring at the ceiling. He didn't know how he'd gotten there. That was the part that rattled him most. He was a trained Velhari combat master with 4 arms and 40 years of reflex conditioning, and there was a 1.7-meter human female standing above him with his wrist still in her hand, and he genuinely could not reconstruct the sequence of events that had led here. She released him. Stepped back. clasped her hands behind her back like nothing had happened. The 40 cadets in the room did not breathe. Tessery the Geth made the sound again. Veyron stood slowly. Every movement controlled. He was too old and too skilled to let shock show on his face, but his chitin mask had done something it almost never did. It had flushed dark at the edges. A Velhari autonomic response to threat that couldn't be trained away. Every cadet in the room saw it. Interesting, Veyron said. His voice was still level. But it was trying to be level now, in a way it hadn't been before. I didn't come here to be struck, Mara said, tone clinical. Not by students, not by staff. I came to learn. If the lesson was dominance establishment, consider it complete. Veyron studied her for a long moment. Behind the calcified mask, behind 40 years of performance and authority, something was occurring that he hadn't expected to feel in this hall: respect. Reluctant. Irritating. Completely involuntary. Where did you train? He asked. Earth, she said. Specifically the Carpathian mountain range. Then 2 years in the Atacama Desert. Then 18 months in a flooded lowland facility outside what used to be Jakarta. He stared at her. Those are not military installations. No, she agreed. They're survival environments. The military training came after. By then, most of the instructors had trouble keeping up. Veyron looked at his wrist. There was no damage. She had stopped precisely short of damage. That was almost more unsettling than if she had broken it. You knew I was going to strike you, he said. It wasn't a question. Mara considered. I estimated an 83% probability when I corrected you the second time. Your weight shifted to your left, your secondary arms lifted slightly, preemptive balance correction. I've seen the pattern before. In whom? Mostly bears, she said. But also large cats. Occasionally humans who thought size was sufficient. A sound came from the Geth cadets. It took Veyron a moment to identify it. They were laughing. Quietly, carefully, but laughing. He turned back to the room. 40 faces, every one of them watching him with an expression he had never seen directed at himself inside this hall. They were fascinated. Not afraid. Not of him, anyway. Of her. Veyron took a slow breath. He had 2 choices. He could escalate, make this about authority, about the chain of command, about consequences for striking an instructor. That was the correct institutional response. Or he could learn something. He had not stayed relevant for 40 years by refusing to learn things. Ellison, he said. Instructor. You will demonstrate that sequence again. Slowly. Her chin lifted, not in defiance, but in something more like acknowledgement. To the class? To the class. She nodded once. Turned to face the room. What followed was 40 minutes that not one cadet in that hall would forget for the rest of their lives. Mara Ellison walked them through the mechanics of what she'd done, the angles, the timing, the way a smaller body could redirect mass instead of opposing it. She explained it the way she explained everything, precisely, without ego, as a set of physical facts that could be learned and used. She demonstrated on Veyron himself, by his invitation, for more times at varying speeds. Each time, he landed on the floor. Each time, he stood up without expression. By the end, Tessery had stopped making alarmed sounds entirely. He was taking notes. At the close of the session, as the cadets filed out, Veyron stopped her with a word. Ellison. She turned. Your species, he said slowly, has been in interstellar contact for what, 60 years? 63. And before that? She met his eyes. Before that, we were alone on a planet that was actively trying to kill us. Volcanoes. Ice ages. Pandemics. Apex predators. Other humans. A pause. We had to figure out how to survive all of it without anyone's help. Veyron was quiet for a long time. And did you? He finally asked. Survive it? Mara Ellison picked up her pack. Slung it over one shoulder. Looked back at him from the doorway. We're here, aren't we? She said. She walked out into the corridor light. Behind her, Instructor Kale Veyron, four-armed, chitin-masked, 40-year veteran of combat education across 6 star systems, stood alone in his hall and thought very carefully about what he had just been taught. His wrist, unblemished, still held the ghost of her grip. He had a feeling it always would.